always, it's a privilege to host your session. So Henry, we are so excited. And if you don't mind, could you please introduce yourself? I know that you need no introduction because you are a famous scientist, that too from NASA. But for the sake of this session, could you please introduce?
Yes. So my name is Henry Throop. I have a PhD in astronomy, and I work for NASA in Washington, D.C. in the U.S. And I'm from the U.S. The way I got to NASA is that I studied physics in secondary school, and I had a really good physics teacher in secondary school who I really liked because he was very enthusiastic, and we learned how physics worked, and we learned a lot of intuition about the world and the motion of things and mathematics and so forth. And so I loved him as a physics teacher, Mr. Cannon, and I still talk with him. I talked with him about a month ago, and he was the best teacher ever. So I have so much love for him and how much I learned from him. And then I went to university. I went to university in the US and I studied physics and got a BSc in physics. And after that, I decided I didn't really know what to do, but I decided that I liked physics and astronomy enough. And so I applied to postgraduate programs. And so I studied postgraduate and got an MSc and PhD in astronomy at the University of Colorado, which is in Boulder, Colorado in the US. And one of the things which NASA does is I did not study at NASA, but NASA funds research programs and NASA funds students at a lot of universities. So NASA paid for the tuition for me and other students to learn astronomy and to get postgraduate education in astronomy. And there are many options for people from India or Sri Lanka or the UK or Australia or Italy. So many different countries. There's people who come to the U.S. from different countries, and at many of those students, if they're studying physics or they're studying science or studying astronomy, NASA or the universities will pay for their education because to the U.S. it's so important to get an education. There's so many good programs in the U.S., such as the Fulbright program, which your teacher knows about well. It sent him to the U.S. And there's one of the students who was doing postgraduate studies along with me. He also had a Fulbright, and his Fulbright was to come and study astronomy in the U.S. Next to me. And so there were many people who were funded either by the Fulbright program or by NASA and research grants to come to the U.S. and study. So for those of you who these are very competitive. And so it's only for the people who are at the top of their class. But for people who are at the top of your class, what I encourage you to do is get a BSc in India, studying what you love, whether it's physics or science or astronomy, and then apply to, if you can, get an MSc in India. And then after that, apply to go abroad and apply to postgraduate programs such as a PhD program in the US, if that's what you're interested in. There's so many different programs. There's so many different universities. There are the big universities that you've heard of, the most famous universities. But there are 1,000 other universities in the US that you haven't heard of that are just as good. And so I encourage you to don't look at just the big universities, but look at all of the small universities as well. So that's how I got there. So I have my PhD, and then I work at NASA, and I do research, and I manage the research programs in the outer solar system. I don't study galaxies. I don't study black holes. I study stuff close to us inside our solar system, that is the planets. But I'm an expert on the planets.
Thank you.
Hello, how are you?
I'm fine, sir. What about you, sir?
Very good, thank you.
My name is Gayatri. I'm an educator from Z.P.H.S Ilavaram. I'm so thrilled to interact with you. Here I would like to share a little information. In recent years, astronomers have spent a lot of time trying to discover the traces of simple life forms known as biosignatures elsewhere in the universe. However, if an alien planet was home to intelligent life that built a technological civilization, and there could be technosignatures that could be detected from the Earth. Here I would like to ask you a question. Can I ask, sir?
Yes, please.
Do you believe the concept of aliens? If aliens exist, are they highly intelligent than us?
Yes. So I definitely believe that there is quite likely to be life elsewhere in the universe. So what we mean by aliens is just life beyond the Earth. And we might have life on the other planets like Mars and Venus and Jupiter, or on the moons of those other planets. Or there could be life which is a long way away on other stars, because other stars are many, many light years away. The planets are very close in comparison. So we can visit planets with a spacecraft. The other stars are too far away, and we can't visit them with a spacecraft. And I think there might be life both on the planets in our solar system and on planets around other distant stars. And the reason why is that there's so many stars in the universe. There's 100 billion stars in our galaxy. That's a 1 with 9 zeros after it. And then there's 100 billion galaxies in the universe. So that's a 1 with 22 zeros after it. It's like 1 0 0 0 0 0. That many stars in the universe. And that number is so big that I bet that at least one of them has life. We've never found life, and NASA has spent a lot of time looking for life. NASA has spent a lot of spacecraft to Mars and to Jupiter and to comets and to asteroids. And so far, we haven't found life. But we're still looking, and we've just started looking. And one exciting place that we're going to look is a spacecraft that's going to Jupiter's moon called Europa. And it's going to launch in October of 2024. And it's called the Europa Clipper. And that one is going to look for the oceans below the surface of Europa. Europa looks kind of like the North Pole of the Earth, where you have ice on the top. It's cold. You have ice on the top, and then below the ice, you have oceans below the ice. And so maybe in those oceans there might be life, and that's where we're going to look. So the spacecraft is going to launch in 2024. It will take 6 years to get out to Jupiter, and then starting in about 2030, it will look for life and look for chemistry and look for the history of everything on Europa. So please tune into that, because that's going to be super exciting in our search for life.
How are you, sir?
Good. How are you?
I'm fine, sir. This is Husnia, an 8th grader from Z.P.H.S Ilavaram. I'm very lucky to interact with you today, sir. Here I want to share a little information with you. During astronauts' stay on International Space Station, astronauts have to continue working and living in an environment that is totally different to that on here Earth. They still need to keep clean, eat and drink, and keep fit and healthy. In this concept, I would like to ask a question, sir. Can I?
Yes, please.
How long can a human in outer space last without spacesuit before exploding?
That is a great question. So we have people on the space station, and some people on the space station have stayed there for a long time, many, many months. And I think that some people in total have stayed on the space station more than a year. They've gone there and then they've come back to it. And in the space station, it's pressurized and it's warm, because for us to maintain health, we have to be warm and we have to have pressure. And so if people go outside of the space station, that's why they have to have a spacesuit. Like if they do a spacewalk, they have to have a spacesuit, both that they keep warm and that they keep pressure. And the pressure means that they can breathe oxygen. Now, if you were to take someone and put them out in space with no spacesuit, two things would happen. They would not be able to breathe, and so it would feel like they were suffocated, like they were choking, because they have no oxygen. And then they would get very cold, and they would get colder and colder and colder because there's no insulation, and the air doesn't keep them warm, and also they can't breathe the air. So both of those things would happen. They would not explode because all of the air would just come out of them would come out of their mouth. Essentially, they would suffocate more than explode. They would not explode, but they would freeze, and it would be it's very dangerous. You don't want to go out in space without a spacesuit because you can suffocate and you can freeze.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Hello.
How are you, sir?
Very good. Thank you. How are you?
I'm also fine, sir. Thank you, sir. This is Mamata, an 80th grader from Z.P.H.S Ilavaram. I'm so privileged to interact with you, sir. Here, I would like to share little information. In space, the pull of gravity is very low. This system can often remove too much fuel from our legs and put it into our chest and head. Astronauts can then experience motion sickness, loss of balance, and loss of taste and smell. In this context, I would like to ask you a question, sir. Can I?
Yes, please.
What could your spaceship do if it stopped because it ran out of fuel?
Oh, so what would your spaceship do if it ran out of fuel? So the International Space Station keeps the health of the astronauts because it has solar cells on, and so the solar cells make electricity, and they keep the pumps so that it's pressurized inside as well. And if you don't have the electricity from the solar cells, then it would be very, very hard to maintain safety on the space station. Now, this is in fact so. Eventually, if you lose the electricity, then you cannot survive anymore on the space station, and so the astronauts would not be able to live there. This is actually one of the reasons why NASA uses a lot of robots to explore the solar system. So if we go to Mars, we don't take astronauts, we take robots. And if we go to Jupiter, we don't take astronauts, we take robots. And if we go to Saturn, or if we go to Pluto, or if we go to a comet, all these places, we take robots. And that's because robots don't need as many things as humans do. You don't need air, you don't need to stay warm as much. You don't need food, you don't need a bathroom, you don't need water. All of these things which we need for humans, you don't need for robots. And so a lot of the exploration in the solar system that we do with robots because they are kind of, more they let us explore more safely and more effectively than using humans.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Hello.
How are you, sir?
Very good, very good. How are you?
I am fine, sir. Thank you. This is Nitika. I am an 8th grader from Z.P.H.S Ilavaram. I am so lucky to interact with you. Here, I would like to share a little information. A job at NASA as a scientist in addition to being a vital, inventive, and thrilling, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration can also be competitive and demanding. To fit your stage of life and career, NASA provides a range of collaboration and job possibilities. Here, I would like to ask you a question. Can I, sir?
Yes, please.
What kind of education and job opportunities are there with NASA?
So there are many, many different possibilities. There are many people at NASA who are scientists and engineers. That's the largest group of people who are scientists and engineers at NASA. But there are many, many other people too. There are teachers, there are writers, there are journalists, there are software programmers, there are people who maintain the engines, there's people who build the buildings, there's people who do the graphics, there's people who do the arts, there's people who make movies. There's all of these different skills at NASA. So NASA is super diverse in that it requires so many different skills from so many different areas. So for people who are in the sciences, a lot of times their education is paid for by NASA. So NASA will see them, or they will apply to a university in the US, and then the university is funded by NASA to do research, and the students will help with that research. And that's how their education is paid for. And so if you have questions about going to the US to study, I encourage you to talk with the US Embassy or talk with your teacher about it, because he is also someone who went to the US to study through the Fulbright program. And there's so many different programs. NASA is very interested in international cooperation and work between India and the US and between other countries and the US. And I'm so grateful to talk with you about that right now. So thank you. Hello.
My name is Jessica. I am a 9th grader from Z.P.H.S School, Ilavaram. I am so honored to interact with you. I would like to share a little information. The moon is Earth's only natural satellite. It goes around the Earth at a distance of about 239,000 miles. The Earth and moon are tidally locked. It rotates are so in scenic. We only see one side of the Earth, one side of the moon. This context, I would like to ask you a question. Can I ask, sir?
Yes, please.
The moon has no magnetic field. Why?
Yes, great question. So 2 reasons. The moon, the Earth's magnetic field is caused by the iron and mostly by the iron, which is at its core. And so in the Earth, you have, on the edge, you have the ocean, the atmosphere, and then the oceans, and then rocks, and then at the core, you have the metal. So that's how the structure of the Earth is. You have the metal at the core, and then moving outward, you have rocks, and then moving outward, you have the oceans, and then moving outward, you have the atmosphere. So it's kind of goes from the most dense into the least dense. And the Earth's magnetic field is made in the core in the center. And that's where you have iron, mostly iron and some nickel, some other metals. And when they move, then they make the magnetic field of the Earth. However, on the moon, you don't have as big a core. The moon's core is very, very small. And it mostly just has the rocks, which are kind of like the ones on the edge of the Earth. It doesn't have much of a core. And the core that it does have is cold, and so it's not moving as much as the Earth's is. And a lot of this is because the moon actually came from the Earth. The Earth was hit by something about the size of Mars. It went like this, and it spewed off a lot of material from the Earth. It went in orbit around the Earth, and that's actually what made the moon. So the Earth's core, that explosion, that impact, didn't take away the Earth's core, and so the Earth's core still has this magnetic field, but there's just not enough metal in the moon to make a magnetic field there.
Hello, sir. My name is Padmaja. I am a 8th grader from Z.P.H.S School, Ilavaram. Now I would like to share a little information. Can I, sir?
Yes, please.
The technical capabilities acquired by India and the enthusiasm of modern Indian scientists in exploring the moon prompted ISRO to undertake Chandrayaan-1, India's first mission to the moon. The primary objectives of the mission are to expand knowledge about the origin and the evolution of the moon. In this context, I would like to ask you a question. Can I ask, sir?
Yes, please.
What is the role of India in space-related activities? Do you think that India will be successful in launching Mangalyaan 2?
Oh, I certainly hope so. I hope so, because Mangalyaan 1, was so exciting. In fact, let me show you. I have in my wallet all the time. I have the 2,000 rupee note right there, right? So this is one of my favorite things because you can see Mangalyaan 1 there, and then you can see see Mars right there. And so Mangalyaan 1 was this amazing mission, and it was only successful through international cooperation. So it was built and operated by ISRO, but there was also instruments and expertise contributed by NASA and by other countries. And so Mongolian 1 was, entered orbit more than 10 years ago. And Mongolian 2, which I expect will launch in the next year or so. But I think, I don't know if there's been a date announced for it or the details announced for it, but I know that ISRO was talking about 2024. I know that ISRO is hard at work on Mongolian 2, and I hope that it is extremely successful. It is really hard to make spacecraft because I watched the Chandrayaan 3 landing, and that was extremely exciting because it landed there, and millions of people around the world were watching it. But it was also so devastating when Chandrayaan 2 crash landed on the surface of the moon. So it's very hard. It's very challenging. It's always difficult to do space exploration. And sometimes things will not go right the first time. And eventually, if you stick with things, then you learn from your mistakes. And so I wish ISRO and all of India the best of luck with Mongolian 2.
Hello, sir. How are you today?
Hello, how are you?
I'm fine.
Very good.
What about you?
Very good, thank you.
This is Dikshit, an ninth grader from Z.P.H.S Ilavaram. I would like to share a little information with you. Can I, sir?
Please.
Space technology is technology for use in outer space. Space technology includes space vehicles such as spacecraft, satellites, space stations, and orbital launch vehicles, deep space communication, in-space propulsion, and a wide variety of other technologies, including support infrastructure, equipment, and procedures. In this connection, I would like to ask you a question. Can I, sir?
Please.
What are the current challenges and opportunities for the space technology?
So there are so many different things. I think that space technology keeps being improved, and it's only due to a lot of work by engineers that technology improves. I think one thing which is so important is launch vehicles. That there are many, many new launch vehicles, both large launch vehicles and small launch vehicles that are being made, some by companies like SpaceX and Lockheed, and some by groups like ISRO. ISRO has new launch vehicles as well. And launch vehicle is a rocket. Launch vehicle, rocket, same thing. And some of these rockets are reusable, and that's very nice because that lets you use them, over and over and over again, just like an airplane or just like a car that you use over and over again. With an old style rocket, you would throw the rocket away after using it at one time, and so it's very wasteful and very expensive. But with a reusable rocket, it is much more inexpensive and much more efficient. So that's one of the huge breakthroughs, is in reusable rockets. Also, another breakthrough, which we are working on, is about communication, using optical communication rather than radio communication. And so in the past, spacecraft have always used radio communication. And that's kind of like a mobile phone would use, right? Radio communication. But with optical communication, instead of using a radio, you use a laser, and you pulse the laser on and off. And this can allow for much faster transmission at lower power. And so this way you can send larger files, more data, you can send it faster, sometimes you can send it more reliably, and you can send it at lower power than you would with a radio communication. So this is particularly important for spacecraft which are a long way from the Earth. So if you're exploring the asteroids, or you're exploring Jupiter, or you're exploring Saturn, then optical communication can be really, really important. So that's, I think, another area where technology is really important. Also, one more thing, I guess, I should mention that AI is growing in importance for spacecraft. That if you have a spacecraft on the surface of Mars, with the old spacecraft, like with the Mars rovers, the Curiosity rover, in the past, you would have to have people who drove it every day and who told it exactly how to drive its wheels and where to turn and where to steer. But with the latest Mars rovers, like the Perseverance rover, it does a much better job of using software to drive itself. So the humans, the people, still have to tell it where to go to. But the rover, its software is able to figure out, which rock to drive around and how to steer to get there. And it uses its cameras, and it uses its computers, and it uses its stereo vision and other sensors to navigate the surface of Mars. So that's another technology that I think is going to really contribute to the future.
Sir, how are you?
Hello, thank you. How are you? Good.
I'm fine, sir. My name is Sai Surya, a ninth grader from Z.P.H.S School, Ilavaram. International Space Station (ISS) is a large space station assembled and maintained in low Earth orbit by collaboration of 5 space agencies and their contracts: NASA, United States, Roscosmos, Russia, NASA, Japan, CSA, Canada, and ESA, Europe. Sir,
Yes.
I would like to ask a question. Can I ask, sir?
Please.
So why do we use an international space station? And what kind of health issues do astronauts experience in space?
So I think that the biggest issue that astronauts experience in space is they do not feel gravity. And so not feeling gravity means that your muscles and your bones get weaker because of this. And so one of the things that the astronauts must do is exercise frequently, and exercise, because normally on Earth, you exercise every day and every minute. Every time you lift up your arms or every time you move your legs, you're exercising. But in space, in 0G, when you move your legs or you move your arms, you're not exercising nearly as much. And so your body can become weaker. And that's the biggest issue with human health in the space station.
Hello, sir. How are you?
Hello. Very good. Thank you.
My name is Subramanya Srimas, a 9th grade student from Z.P.H.S School, Ilavaram. I would like to share some information with you. Can I share, sir?
Please.
Like the moon, Mars is a rich destination for the scientific discovery and a driver of technologies that will enable human to travel and explore far from the Earth. Mars remains our horizon goal for human exploration because it is one of the only other places we know in the solar system where life may have existed. Sir, I would like to ask a question. Can I ask, sir?
Please.
NASA is preparing to send a human to Mars in 2030. What is the objective of the Mars mission?
So right now, NASA has said that we want to send humans to Mars in the future, but we don't have an exact date. So by 2030, probably not yet. The first thing to do is go to the moon. Now, NASA went to the moon in 1969, 1970, 71, 72. So for 4 years, NASA was going to the moon with humans. And since then, no other country has gone back to the moon with humans. Some countries will probably go soon. But so NASA will go back in about 2026 or maybe 2027 to the moon. And after that, we will develop technology to go to Mars. But Mars is a long way away. The fastest spacecraft take only a couple of hours to get to the moon. The fastest spacecraft that we have take many, many months to get to Mars. Mars is a much bigger planet. It has much bigger gravity. So when you leave Mars, you have to have a much bigger rocket. It takes longer to get there. It's much harder to get back, and it takes longer to get back. It's much further away from Earth, and so you can't communicate as easily. And both Mars and the moon are pretty much, dry. They have very little atmosphere. They have very little water. They have no food. They have no no way of growing food. And so they're very, very difficult to live on. So everything you bring, you have to bring yourself. So we're going to try to learn what we can about how to travel through the solar system when we go to the moon. It's called the Artemis mission, and Artemis will launch we're working on it now, and we've done some test launches, but in 2024, 25, like that, 2026 or 2027, we will send humans to the moon. And we'll do that many times. And then after we've done that, then we will send humans to Mars, because Mars is the next logical place to go. Venus is too hot, Mercury is too hot, but Mars is, much colder than the Earth, but it's also a little bit similar to the Earth and the moon. And so it's a good place to go after the moon.
Thank you, sir.
And thank you so much for answering my students' questions, and that too comprehensively and so elaborately. So I would like to take an opportunity to ask one of my favorite questions, which is exoplanets. Exoplanets is something that is so curious for me all the time, even right from my childhood. So regarding this fact, I would like to ask you, how do we find exoplanets? What is the closest exoplanet to Earth? Will a person ever go to exoplanet? Because these are the questions which always, I think, pass in my mind.
Yeah.
Yes, I think not just me and everybody in this universe, I think this world, I think they have these particular questions. So could you please explain about this?
Yeah, so exoplanets are solar systems which are around other stars. So kind of like our solar system, but around a different star. And the closest exoplanet that we know of is in fact around the closest star. The closest star is Alpha Centauri or Proxima Centauri. And that's about 4 light years away. And 4 light years, that's a distance. That means if you go at the speed of light, which is 300,000 kilometers per second, if you go at the speed of light for 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds, if you do that for 4 years, then you finally get out to Proxima Centauri. Now, that's at the speed of light, which is the fastest thing that we know of. At the speed of a spacecraft, it takes about 1 lakh years to get out to Alpha Centauri. So any person who wants to go out to Alpha Centauri has to sit on the spacecraft for 1 lakh years. Probably not going to happen, because some of us would be dead by the time we get out there. Maybe there's volunteers there for someone who wants to sit there for 1 lakh years, but it's a long time to go out to the exoplanet. So we can't see the exoplanets directly, but they're very, very hard to detect in telescopes. The planets that are close, like Mercury and Venus and Jupiter, we can see those with our naked eye and with telescopes. But with exoplanets, they're very, very hard to detect. One of the ways that we do detect them is not exactly by taking a picture with a telescope, but we see the planet pass in front of the star. So just kind of like if my face here is the star and a planet passes in front of it, and it does that occasionally, like this, and if it does that like once a year or once a month or whatever, then you see the light coming from my face, and you see that light drop as the planet is in front of it. And if you see the light from the planet drop every month or every year, then you know that there's a planet that's going in front of that star every month or every year. And so that's one of the ways that we know how exoplanets exist. Even in the largest telescopes, the exoplanets are so tiny and so faint compared with a star that they're very, very hard to see. It's kind of like looking, if there's a car headlights that are coming toward you, it's kind of like trying to see a mosquito next to the car headlights. The mosquito might be so much fainter, in fact, millions or billions of times fainter than the mosquito, that you don't see it, or the headlights are brighter, that you don't see it. So in some of the very, very large telescopes, we have just begun to be able to see the planets directly. but we can't see any details. We can't see continents or clouds or mountains or anything like that on them. So we have to build, in order to do this, we're actually working on building some larger and larger space telescopes, kind of like the James Webb Space Telescope, which is the biggest space telescope we have, but even bigger. So next generation, 20 years or 30 years down the road, maybe we'll have like a bigger version of James Webb Space Telescope, which the whole job is to look for exoplanets and make maps of their surface. Thank you, thank you. It's such a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much.